So I'm going to go ahead and call the Community and Technical Colleges Formula Advisory Committee meeting to order. As is a custom, I'm Dr. Brent Wallace from North Central Texas College, and I'm serving as the committee chair. Again, being advised that today's meeting is being broadcast live publicly and recorded. So before we begin, I remind us to be sure to try to state our names anytime we have something to ask or speak, especially if your camera is not able to be on. Mute your device when you're not speaking if you can, and then keep background noise to a minimum. If we could mute our devices when you're not speaking, that would be awesome. I'm going to turn to Marie, Ms. Burks, and before we do that, I just want to say something, if with her permission or even without. Ms. Burks is leaving the coordinating board. I hope we didn't do this to her through the work, but she is taking another opportunity, and I want to publicly just thank her for all her work working with us, and do that before we get to the end of an agenda. We normally do that. Emily is been a great resource for us as well, but she's going to be taking some time off, so for her reasons, and so anyway. Thank you, ladies, for your work with this group. It was been invaluable to us, and we can't do it without your support. But Marie, if you would take our role and for the last time, perhaps.
Sure. Thank you so much for those kind words. We'll leave you in good hands. Yes, so we'll proceed. Mr. Texas Buckholz. Mr. Richard Cervantes.
Here.
Ms. Terry Crawford.
Here.
Ms. Mary Elizondo.
Here.
Mr. Raul Garcia.
Here.
Mr. Jonathan Hoekstra.
Here. I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Patrick Lee.
Here.
Dr. Maldonado indicated he had another commitment. Dr. Jesus Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Mary Wickland.
Present.
And Mr. Jim Yiannopoulos.
I'm here.
Great. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is fairly straightforward, and that's consideration and approval of minutes from the meeting held on December the 8th, 2021. A draft was included in your agenda materials. So any questions, comments? I want to reflect one thing in the minutes, just because I was asked by Dr. Maldonado to verify his support for the work being done. And that was reflected in those minutes. If you remember, he made mention in the last meeting he wouldn't be able to attend today because of a board meeting conflict, but very supportive of where we were going. And he and I saw each other Monday, and he wanted to make sure we continue to know that he really likes the two items that we're working on today. He was in support of those, but that is reflected in those minutes. So I wanted to publicly make mention of that. Any other corrections or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
This is Terry Crawford, so moved.
Thank you, Terry. Do I have a second?
Mr. Richard Cervantes, I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to assume we're all in favor. If you're opposed, would you raise your hand? That might be easier in a virtual meeting here. Any opposition? Hearing none, those pass unanimously, and I appreciate our staff at the coordinating board for helping us keep those and take those minutes for us. All right, folks, so we are at a really nice juncture to be at December. I really feel good. You would have received quite a few materials ahead of the meeting today. Again, I have to just say thank you to coordinating board and the data teams that have put some of this together for us, because that is a heavy lift to input all of this data and see where our institutions will fall out. But we do arrive on, and I let it be known for the minutes that Mr. Buckholz has arrived. He and I were both in the same meeting a few minutes ago, so we understand those time constraints. So he has arrived. But I want to start with charge 4, which is to institute a formal process for the committee to recommend critical fields for the inclusion and removal for success points based on available data trends and about regional and state workforce needs. Using that formal methodology and the most recently available data, develop recommendations for 2 sets of fields to the coordinating board. One set of fields recommended for additional to critical fields list and one set for the removal from that critical fields list. Dr. Rodriguez is with us today, and he is going to give us some further insights. And I think you received some of their recommendation narrative. If you didn't, we can probably even pull some of that up if we need to. But Roberto, I'm going to turn that over to you now, sir.
Thank you, sir. Again, I apologize. I'm having problems with my video camera. I hope you can hear me. But again, this is the same process that we discussed in our last meeting. We went through it. I think Ms. Moore did a great job in walking us through it, but it was pretty daunting information. So we took the decision to postpone it, share the documents with the committee for review, but not much has changed since our last meeting. So if you would like, we can go through the process again, Chairman. And if Chelsea is ready to walk us through it, but we're making the.
We can do either one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking at this, and I think we've had time to read ahead of the meeting. There have not, as Dr. Rodriguez pointed out, there's not been a lot of shift. The bigger piece from what I've garnered is we're moving critical fields to the narrative of targeted field or targeted occupation, which I think really aligns well. And then those 15 existing, we end up with 51. You would have seen that list, but what is the opinion of the committee? Do you want to run through everyone individually again, or do you feel good about what you've been presented and we can entertain a motion to do that? What would be the desire of the committee?
This is Terry Crawford. I've had a chance to kind of go over it and review it. I'm comfortable with what's been presented.
I think the big piece too is some of the things that I think are very healthy for this is the movement to the 4-digit SIP has been a positive. I really, to the committee work group on this, this was a lot of work and a lot of data, and I really appreciate the fact that we are kind of giving a regional perspective ability, and I think that means a lot to those of us that have voiced that in the initial. If we're good, I would entertain a motion either as a motion from Dr. Rodriguez from the work group. He could make that, and we could have a second and then have further conversation if we need to. Dr. Rodriguez, are you prepared to make that narrative your formal motion?
Yes, Chairman. I'd like to move forward with the recommendations presented to the committee.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
As Richard Cervantes, I will second it.
Okay. Now, any further discussion? Any last minute questions or comments?
I think I just want to add that
Sure.
one thing we did not address were the emerging fields or emerging industries. That's hopefully for the next committee to address.
I know, and that's very difficult, but I do think you've all tackled some really important things about moving us to the targeted field, and just this is a lot of work, and the report was very well presented, and I sure appreciate the work. I know all of us do.
Yeah, and once again, reiterate the wonderful collaborative spirit from the coordinating board and Texas Association of Community Colleges in working with us and redoing the research and helping us write the report.
Hearing no other questions, because I'm just that kind of guy with virtual meeting, I think it's easier. I'm going to ask Ms. Burks again to call roll, and we vote as individuals, yay being for those recommendations for critical fields, and nay being against some piece of that. But if we could call the roll, Ms. Burks.
Mr. Tex Buckholtz,
Aye.
Mr. Richard Cervantes.
Aye.
Ms. Terry Crawford.
Aye.
Ms. Mary Elizondo.
Aye.
Mr. Raul Garcia.
Aye.
Mr. Jonathan Hoekstra.
Aye.
Mr. Patrick Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Jesus Rodriguez,
Aye.
Ms. Mary Wickland,
Aye.
Mr. Jim Yiannopoulos,
Aye.
and Dr. Brent Wallace.
Aye. All right, that carries. Thank you all so much. As we had mentioned in previous meetings, the work of each of these is fairly much influences and or directs some of our conversations to charge, that is to study and make appropriations for funding levels for contact hour, core, and student success funding. So again, had some time for you all to review. Mr. Cervantes, Richard, anything you'd like to add or subtract or call any kind of conversation you'd like to have with us before we look at finalizing that?
No, I don't think I have anything else to add from what has already been provided.
Perfect. As highlights for some of the things that I again wanted to kind of verify in my own head, folks, I really appreciate if you look at what we're considering for socioeconomically disadvantaged students. I think there's a lot to be said about the additional 0.5 point for academically or economically disadvantaged for transfer critical fields awards and non-critical. And then I also appreciate the 15-hour, just from my standpoint, the 0.5 points for 15 schedule hours of dual credit attainment and the restoration of non-critical to 2 from the 1.2. Just as an opinion for me, that really is, as a personal member of the committee, I really appreciated that. I think that means a lot to us. If you look at what is on your screen being shared right now, you get a sense of the overall impact. Bottom line, we're looking at a 10.7% increase to overall funding. If you consider the fact that almost feels bluntly, ladies and gentlemen, like we've had a 4-year kind of rather than just one biennium, in a sense, that's very reasonable, I believe. I think that that's a good place to be. I was pleased to see it at that level. Bluntly, I thought we might be closer to 14 to 15%. I really appreciate using the higher education price index, this group using it rather than the consumer price index. But as you look at this chart she's sharing, anything that sticks out you might have a question about, or any fairly synthesizing what we talked about, you're looking at, I think there's a big, if you go back to the top of that for us, Marie, if you would, I think one of the big pieces is when you look at the increase to core, you're talking about a 47% increase there. But when you consider for some institutions that core funding can be as much as 30% of their overall, can be a big hunk of their operating budget versus some of the large where that might be 0.01 or something of their operating. But I do feel good about that as we look, and Richard, your committee pointed out very eloquently the work of guided pathways, the wraparound service expenses that are standardized for every institution, student success coaches, et cetera. Makes a lot of sense. But any questions about core? Hearing none of those, any questions about the contact hour? Again, we're looking at a 4.2, am I correct, increase there? And then any success point questions? Just want to make sure we.
Mr. Chairman, I would want to, it's a comment that I've made before, and it's a distinction between critical and non-critical. And because the non-critical awards were reduced down to 1.2, I do think it's important for us as we move things forward that we identify what a non-critical award will be. I mean, there are some of us that are sensitive to the notion that the awards, that the degrees that we have that are being issued were reduced down. And I think as we move forward, we've talked about defining it and putting it in parentheses And I think we need to do that again, the degree, certificate, or core curriculum completer. That's my only comment on the success.
Okay. So in under what would have been point 4 of your document you provided, Richard, would be that we go ahead and try on the non-critical award in parentheses. Would you want to add that definition?
I would go maybe even more to the, go back to Marie's formula. 'Cause I
Okay.
didn't put it in, I updated this, but
Sure.
Marie, if you go back to your formula,
Okay.
and for the item that you have, you've provided a great definition. I'm just suggesting we include that in there. Yes, right. You see where you footnoted that? Right after where it says
The
non-critical awards, put in parentheses those 3 certificates, graduation and completer.
perfect. Okay.
That place right there you're picking, Marie, is more of the Fields Award. I don't know if there's a distinction between the awards. I see it down below too. And I thought it went towards the yeah, see where it says 2 points from 1.2? Right in there, right before right after the non-critical awards, I would put the parentheses there. Yeah, there, exactly, right there. Sorry.
Nothing like having you do corrections live on. That's kind of cool though. We could normally it would have taken a paper going back and forth, right?
It may
makes
not mean
sense.
anything to some folks, but I'm just mindful of the notion that it got reduced down, and it just seemed so against what our mission, our number one mission is in these institutions. And so I don't want to lose sight of that.
I think that's a good point. Perfect. Any others under that? I mean, any other questions or comment? Now, this is good. Okay. And then still comfortable with the final, the BAT, for those of you that may have a BAT, that was increased. So we're in good shape there, I believe, based on the input from those organizations. You're at 23% increase there. And then the total formula in millions takes us up by 10.5. Yes, yes, Jim, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Were we supposed to, or was it ever discussed on competency-based funding? Was that supposed to be part of our formula? We talked about it in a biennium, but
no, we don't really have an opportunity. I mean, if you're talking, are you talking about competency-based education, credentialing, and then formula based around that?
Yes, there's no formula to get funding for the way you present those courses.
There isn't, and we've just not been prepared, Jim, as this committee this time to tackle that. I think there's going to have to be some future work ahead of the Formula Advisory Committee with the commissioner, perhaps, on how we begin to tackle that credit. I mean, we're all struggling. You're right. It's very difficult, but and you all disagree with me, but I think that's one of the hardest things is experiential learning and credit by experience and some of those others. And so we don't have that in here, Jim, this time.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. What I am entertaining is a motion to approve these that can come from the committee or the subgroup, work group through Mr. Cervantes or anyone else that might want to.
Yeah, this is Richard. I will make the motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
This is Jim.
Okay, Jim?
Yes, sir. Second.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good.
All right, we're going to
Richard.
call the roll one more time, folks, on this one. All right, Ms. Burks, if you'd call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Tex Buckholz,
Aye.
Mr. Richard Cervantes.
Very enthusiastic, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Terry Crawford,
Yes.
Ms. Mary Elizondo,
Yes.
Mr. Raul Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Jonathan Hoekstra,
Yes.
Mr. Patrick Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Jesus Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Mary Wickland,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Yiannopoulos,
Yes.
and Dr. Brent Wallace.
Yes. All right, we have approval. Marvelous. So a couple of things before we move on. One is what's next traditionally is compiling this all into one report. And so that's the next big piece. And what I'm wondering is if this committee would entertain the notion of myself and the vice chair, Mr. Garcia, work with coordinating board staff in the next week or two to finalize what you've approved, put in the document, and go ahead and be able to complete that without coming back to you again. Just simply putting these things in. We will give you that report in a couple of days when we do it to feedback if you see a clerical error or if we've made a typographical error by any reason. But I would rather not delay. I don't think there's a reason to delay the finalization of the report now until January when we've got those things voted on and we're just putting it in basically the template that we need to put that in. We can do that through two ways. We could have a formal motion to do that by someone, or we could maybe do it by acclamation, either way. But are we good with he and I testing that, getting it in the template with staff and then sending it to you? Give me a day or so to look at that. Is that pretty much an acclamation? We're good there? All right, perfect. We've done, that's typically, I think, how the chair has done the last minute revisions with the vice chair and then been able to send that out. It doesn't shift your narratives hardly at all. It's just a matter of putting all of this into one document. Perfect. We will do that as soon as possible. That being said, I want to note a couple of other things. First of all, thank you. Wow, we did a lot of work during virtual meetings, and I think this has been very successful. I appreciate each of you's contribution to this. Again, our huge appreciation to Marie, wishing you best of luck, but thank you to everything you did in this process, and Emily, you as well. We look forward to working with new members, but Marie, we appreciate your service to the coordinating board and to us in this committee and making our lives a lot easier. And so thank you to everyone there, and thank you to each of the work groups and their leadership. Everyone worked hard, and I really appreciate that. Please know that the coordinating board is required by Texas law to provide a report to the board that includes costs related to the Formula Advisory Committee meeting's existence. So committee members in the next few days probably will receive an email request for a record of any directly related expenses in their service to this committee. So if you get that and you have any to fill on that, or even if you don't, please sign and fill that out and send that back to our coordinating board staff, because they are legally required to collect that information. This is probably the least expensive version any of us, because we've been able to stay in our own offices. And so that's probably going to be one of the lower expense reports they've ever seen. So I, as chair, I think we'll cancel our January 5th meeting. And that's easy for most of us trying to get back to the thralls of the semester anyway, so that we have completed our work today. So I see no need to call that. If for some reason we found that we needed to, we could emergently, but I think the rest of our business can be conducted by the finalization of the report, email that out, and then email each other if we have questions, and go from there. Any questions about any of this? Any further discussion for the good?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want it to go without saying and thanking you for your leadership.
Well, thank you.
You put us all together and kept us on the same track, and we've got a good result here. I think we're to be proud of, and you're to be commended for your effort too. So we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. It's everybody's on the same playing field. We all need this to work for everyone, and I appreciate the TSTC and Lamar institutions as a part of this. We hopefully it's not just community colleges that are affected by these decisions of the committee. So I appreciate that, Richard, so much. And I feel good about our work, folks. I really do. I think we've really done some really wonderful recommendation that's going to be given a good shot. I think we have a good place where we are. And so thank you for that. Any other questions or any other comments? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
All right. And because of Robert's rules only needs one, apparently. So we are adjourned. Thank you again for your meeting, and the advisory technical community and technical college formula advisory committee.